There's more news that came out of the Ross Atkins presser, and he revealed three players that are most certain to not be back with the Toronto Blue Jays next year. Now, it's not a certainty. The offseason hasn't even begun yet, but there's a strong chance that these three guys are lining up in different uniforms. So we'll break that down and much more in this episode of Jays Digest. What's up, Jays fans? I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse. I hope you're all enjoying the MLB playoffs. They have provided some fireworks. I mean, the Atlanta Braves with a thrilling finish yesterday against the Philadelphia Phillies. We saw the Arizona Diamondbacks jump out to a 2-0 lead. I'm sure Blue Jay fans won't be too happy about that. And the main culprits, Gabriel Moreno drove in a run yesterday. Lourdes Gurriel hit a home run, drove in another run. So those two guys are basically carrying the Arizona offense, and the Blue Jays are sitting on a golf course somewhere nice, I'm pretty sure. So not great, but the MLB playoffs have been very exciting. Hopefully the Jays can have a lengthier run next year. But these three players that we're going to talk about today could be a direct correlation towards them not having a run and having a run when it comes to October next year. So, Nick, very interesting stuff. More stuff coming out of the Ross Atkins presser here. And we're a day ahead of Mark Shapiro speaking. That should be very interesting. And that should provide us a lot of information for the coming days. But what we're focusing on right now is these three guys. And we're going to debate whether or not the Blue Jays should bring them back for the 2024 season.
Yeah, and like you said, Ross Atkins said a lot of things in his press conference. Some more stuff came out after. Before we get into that, make sure to subscribe button. About 73% of you guys aren't subscribed. We're on the road to 10K. All right, Peter, let's get right into it. So this was, of course, during the press conference. Now, there's some stuff that came out after, which is of importance and of relevance. So he said during his press conference, the bulk of our team returning. We will miss Matt Chapman, Brandon Belt, and Kevin Kiermaier, but we'll see opportunities to work to fill those holes from within and externally. So when he said that in the past tense, everyone kind of assumed that they would be gone, and that's kind of the sense that we got as well. And of course, we knew that after the game and after the wildcard loss, Matt Chapman wasn't, he was speaking as if he might not be back in a Toronto Blue Jays uniform next season for whatever reason. Everyone was just saying that they'd be gone. But he did come out and clarify after, off camera, that he sees all three as potential options and didn't mean to talk about them in the past tense. So that's very important. That came out a bit more recently. Now, Peter, I don't think that many of these guys, if any of them, we can discuss who we think is going to come back the most. But Ross Atkins, speaking in the past tense, maybe he realized his mistake and that he shouldn't have said, even if they aren't planning on re-signing him, he shouldn't have said it this early. And this was kind of trying to save face a little bit. That's very, very possible. That would be of, what Ross Atkins would do. But when in his press conference, he made it seem like absolutely those three guys would not be returning. And a little bit disappointing, but you would kind of expect most of them. Maybe Kevin Kiermaier could come back, but I don't know. What are your thoughts on this?
That's not the only mishap that he had in his presser the other day.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that much. And it's Ross Atkins trying to save face, trying to save his job at this point because he's doing whatever he can to not be the general manager of the Blue Jays next season. Maybe he wants out. Maybe he's just digging his own grave here. But yeah, another miscue from Ross Atkins when it comes to talking to the media over there. But I want to talk about each guy individually, Nick. And the first guy that I want to talk about is Matt Chapman. Now, we've said this in the past. Obviously, he's a very streaky hitter. Once May started, he was one of the worst qualified hitters in all of baseball. But if you pop up his stats from this season, Nick, I mean, you're just going to see that he finished second on the team in wins above replacement behind Kevin Gausman. And he was fantastic. He was fantastic defensively. He was fantastic when it comes to base running. But the hitting leaves a lot to be desired. And if it weren't for that first month where he was the best hitter on planet Earth, then maybe that OPS plus is below league average, and maybe that OPS is below 700, and maybe that's just what we could come to expect with Matt Chapman. But I'm not opposed to being a contrarian, Nick. You know this. I'm not opposed to the hot take. I would bring Matt Chapman back. And I would bring him back on the condition that the Blue Jays get a superstar hitter. Now, define superstar as you want to, but when I mean superstar hitter, I'm talking about a guy that is going to slug 40 home runs, that's going to have an OPS over 850. Now, those guys are hard to find, I should say. And there's a couple of them out on the market, out on the trade market as well, that the Blue Jays can go out and acquire. And two guys that I really have my pencil circled on is it's Jorge Soler and it's Cody Bellinger. Now, those are two guys that I could see coming in and filling a huge void offensively. And on that condition, if they can bring one of those two guys in or someone else that I didn't mention, then I would bring Matt Chapman back because his defense is just so invaluable and it helps out Bo Bichette immensely on the left side, and he could get hot. And also, if we're looking at the two playoff games that the Blue Jays played, Matt Chapman was the only one that really put a good swing on the ball a couple of times. He got unlucky. He got robbed by Michael A. Taylor, and he hit a ball that was about a foot and a half foul that probably would have gave the Jays lead or even tied up the ball game. So he got pretty unlucky in the postseason. Obviously, the strikeout numbers are going to kill you as a Jays fan, but I don't know. What do you think about that? Bringing him back on the condition of having a superstar hitter added to the lineup.
Yeah, it would make some sense. I'm just a bit off the Matt Chapman train because of how many strikeouts I saw right down the middle. And I don't know. It's an interesting thing. His contract, it also depends a lot on, of course, the contract number. He's going to be a guy who is, not aging necessarily, but the contract that he's going to get is probably going to take him into his aging years to a degree. And we saw his defense. It is phenomenal. It's going to start tailing off a little bit. It's not the level it was a couple of years ago, even last year. His bat was, like you said, if he didn't have that crazy hot start, he probably would have been a 90 OPS guy or 90 OPS plus guy, which would have been really unfortunate. But like you said, you can't argue with the stats. He has a 4.4 WARs. Defense was amazing. And I mean, if we bring in a guy like Jorge Soler, then I'd definitely be more open to bringing Matt Chapman back. But I don't know how much faith I have in the Blue Jays getting a superstar hitter like that and then re-signing Matt Chapman. Also, I'd almost rather have Elvis Martinez and have him give a chance. But if we're going for it again this year from the from a utility perspective and an asset perspective, then Matt Chapman is most likely going to be a better player and have a better year than a Elvis Martinez there. And in general, I think that Matt Chapman could be a good guy. But I don't know. Do you want to move on to the next player? And I think it's a tough discussion.
Yeah.
It's a tough discussion. Let us know what your thoughts are because ultimately you could go either way. I know a lot of you guys probably don't want Matt Chapman back. I'm kind of that thing, but maybe he priced himself maybe back into the Jays' arms the way he played down the stretch. But yeah, so let's talk about Brandon Belt real quickly. This one should be very, very quick. Peter, I don't think the Jays are going to bring back Brandon Belt. I don't even know if Brandon Belt's going to play baseball again. It's very unlikely, but shout out to him. He had one of the best seasons that we could have expected out of him.
Yeah, and one more thing, just quickly on Matt Chapman before I move on to my thoughts here on Brandon Belt, that the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Yes, we all want Elvis Martinez to come up and be that next potential superstar that we all thought he would be, and he's well on his way, but he's still only 21 years old, and I'd like to see him play every day if the Jays don't bring back Matt Chapman. But if Chapman agrees to a 2-year deal to maybe give Elvis Martinez a little bit more seasoning in the minor leagues, then I'd be more than open to that. 4 or 5 year deal for Matt Chapman. You're walking that line there that I'm sure the Blue Jays don't want to go ahead and approach, but I don't know. It's an interesting conversation to have, but yeah, Matt Chapman is still a good player. Is he elite? No, not at this stage of his career, but I'd still take him over a guy who is very raw by all accounts and someone that we don't know what to expect from because yes, we've been angry about the Jays' lack of in the playoffs, you could say, but is a 21-year-old rookie going to come in and solve all those problems while the team is still trying to contend? I'm not quite sure. But when it comes to Brandon Belt, I'm right there with you. I think the Jays don't bring him back. I hope he retires as a San Francisco Giant, maybe signs a 1-year deal over there to retire a Giant because that's where he spent the majority of his career, and that's where most people, most baseball fans are going to remember him for his time over there. So yeah, I'd like to see that. I don't think the Jays should bring him back just because they do have a lot of internal options as well to fill in for that DH role, whether it be Spencer Horwitz against righties, whether it be Davis Schneider against lefties. It's going to be an interesting thing to follow, but yeah, I don't think they bring him back.
I agree. I think Brandon Belt's kind of the trainer. I think the biggest guy is Matt Chapman. He's the biggest question mark. We also have Kevin Kiermaier, we could discuss before we wrap up. And what a year Kevin Kiermaier had. Is it likely to bring Kevin Kiermaier back? I don't know. He's going to want a pretty hefty contract. I think Dalton Varsho is their center fielder of the future. But I mean, if we get a crazy power bat in, specifically like Jorge Soler, maybe to play one of the outfield spots, where's the room for Kevin Kiermaier? In theory, it makes sense because, he's a great defensive outfielder, and he's getting up there in age a little bit, but he's still phenomenal. But you have Varsho in center, you have Springer in right. I don't think either of those two are going to be moving anytime soon. So I just don't see a fit, especially if we get a crazy power bat back. We want a power bat instead of Kevin Kiermaier at this point, as unfortunate as it is, because he put up almost a 3.9 baseball reference WAR. So I don't know, Peter. 3.9 hour WAR, but unfortunately, I think the fit at this point is not something we need with Ver. I think one of Varsho or Kiermaier, that's what we learned this year. Is we need one defensive specialist. I think most teams that win don't have two, or if they do, the second one is a great hitter as well. And Kiermaier is a contact hitter, not a power hitter.
Yeah, and it's evident that Dalton Varsho is going to be the center fielder of the future for the Toronto Blue Jays, and that's what we predicted when they made the Kevin Kiermaier signing in last offseason. I mean, and obviously Varsho, he's a great defender. Wherever you put him in the outfield, he's going to have he's going to be among the leaders in defensive runs saved and outs above average, even if you do put him in center. And his value will increase because defense isn't as important in left field as it is in center. And if you have a guy that can hit 20 home runs and play elite defense in center field, you have yourself probably a 5 WAR player. And that's what Dalton Varsho did this year. Obviously, his defensive metrics were great, but it doesn't really affect your WAR as much as if you were playing in center every day. So I think he'll be there. And yeah, Kevin Kiermaier was great. He had a good offensive season considering his track record and considering that he's never really been an above average hitter, but he was above average this year.
Yeah.
And he looked great at times. He came up with some big hits. He was a fantastic 9 hitter, but you need some more power up and down that lineup. And if you look at his stats, he only had what, eight home runs.
Yeah,
It's just
nothing.
it's not enough. It's not enough. And I know he's just a defense first player. He grinded out a lot of at-bats. He got on base at a pretty decent clip and turned the lineup over to George Springer and company, but it wasn't enough. And if you can go out and upgrade offensively, I think you can hide a guy in left field. George Springer is still very good in right field as a defender. Dalton Varsho, we know what he can do defensively, so you have more than enough when it comes to personnel to cover that I don't know, lack of defensive acumen that you have in left field. So yeah, Jorge Soler would be great because you're trading away 8 home runs for 36 home runs. Maybe your defense in left field isn't as good, but I think the Jays learned, and they learned the hard way, that defense in left field is not always all that important as opposed to getting a guy that can slug 30 to 35 home runs. So yeah, I'm off that train as well. Loved Kevin Kiermaier, instantly became a fan favorite, but the fit just isn't there. Not with Dalton Varsho, who's going to hit 230 and hit for good power.
Yeah, so let us know what your thoughts are. And then I agree with you. I don't think, like I said, the Kevin Kiermaier train has sailed a bit for me. And, basically what we're saying is we don't know if any of these guys are going to be coming back. And hopefully that we can make at least some signings of some power guys. We'll be covering all that. I'm sure we'll have lots of videos discussing probably Jorge Soler specifically because he's probably the biggest target that most Jays fans want. But that'll wrap up the video. Let us know what your thoughts are. Let us know if you want any of these guys back or if you disagree with Peter's Matt Chapman take, because I feel like a lot of you guys might not want Matt Chapman back because the hate with him has gotten a little bit crazy.
Bring it on.
Borderline ahead. Thank you guys for watching. If you want to check out our video from yesterday, you can click on the screen. See you guys tomorrow.